Imagine a respected member of Congress, someone who has served for decades, representing the people of South Texas, suddenly branded in headlines as indicted, accused of accepting foreign bribes, and then, just as suddenly, legally exonerated by one of the most polarizing figures in modern U.S. politics. That's the story you're about to dive into. Henry Cuellar's journey is more than a legal saga, it's a dramatic arc of ambition, public service, controversy, and redemption. Born into a modest background in Laredo, rising through education and public office, and surviving decades of service, only to face one of the gravest charges a lawmaker can face, then seeing those charges vanish overnight. In this video, we're going to trace that arc from beginning to end, exploring who Henry Cuellar really is, what he stood for, why he became entangled in one of the biggest political corruption cases in recent memory, and what the pardon really means, not just for him, but for the broader questions of power, justice, and influence in American politics. So stay with me as we unravel the surprising, complicated, and controversial life of Henry Cuellar and ask, when someone goes from indicted to pardoned, does that restore their legacy, or does it raise more questions than answers? Henry Cuellar's story begins far from the marble halls of Washington, in the dusty, sun-drenched landscape of Laredo, Texas. Born into a large family as the eldest of 8 children, Cuellar grew up watching his parents, both migrant farm workers, push through long days of physical labor just to keep the family afloat. Those early years weren't just a backdrop, they shaped his worldview. The border wasn't an abstract political talking point, it was home. And the challenges that working-class families faced weren't statistics, they were his daily reality. From a young age, Henry understood what it meant to struggle, to sacrifice, and to dream of something better. But what truly set him apart was an almost unstoppable drive toward education. He wasn't just determined to study, he excelled. After community college, he chased degree after degree, a bachelor's in foreign service, a master's in international trade, a law degree, and eventually, a PhD. It was as if he was gathering every tool he could find to eventually return and serve the community he came from. And before he ever set foot in politics, he worked in a range of fields, teaching, practicing law, and even becoming a licensed customs broker. Each chapter built a deeper understanding of the border economy, international trade, and the law. By the time he stepped into public service, Henry Cuellar wasn't just another politician climbing the ladder. He was a man carved by lived experience. His early life becomes a powerful frame through which to understand every action that came later. The alliances he chose, the priorities he fought for, and the controversies that would eventually define his career. Cuellar's political journey began in the Texas state legislature, where he quickly carved out a reputation as a pragmatic, detail-oriented policymaker. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, but he often knew the policy better than anyone else. His blend of border-centric experience and deep academic background made him a natural fit for roles dealing with trade, security, and public services. Eventually, he rose to become Texas Secretary of State, sharpening his administrative and legal skills before stepping onto the national stage. In 2005, Henry Cuellar entered the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Texas's 28th congressional district. This wasn't an easy seat. It covered a mix of border communities, rural stretches, and parts of San Antonio. It demanded a nuanced approach to immigration, trade, security, and economic development. Cuellar embraced that challenge by positioning himself as a centrist, a bridge between Democrats and Republicans. That approach earned him influence, allies on both sides, and frustration from ideological purists who wanted him to take harder lines. One of Cuellar's biggest sources of power came from his seat on the House Appropriations Committee, the committee that decides where federal money goes. Through that role, he steered millions of dollars into infrastructure, education, health programs, and border region economic development. Supporters praised him as someone who delivered real, measurable benefits to his district. Critics argued that he was too close to corporations, too friendly with conservative lawmakers, and too comfortable navigating the gray areas of political negotiation. Still, Cuellar became known as one of the most influential border district lawmakers in the country. His positions on issues such as border security, trade policy, and immigration reform frequently made national headlines. For years, his career appeared stable, productive, and quietly powerful, until the storm of 2024 would change everything. In May 2024, Henry Cuellar's carefully built political career was jolted by an indictment that sent shockwaves through Washington and his home district. The Department of Justice accused Cuellar and his wife of accepting approximately $600,000 from foreign entities, including an oil company linked to Azerbaijan and a major Mexican financial institution. The allegations were severe: bribery, money laundering, and acting as unregistered foreign agents. According to the indictment, prosecutors claimed that the payments were disguised through consulting contracts and shell companies, and that in exchange, Cuellar was expected to influence U.S. policy in ways beneficial to those foreign interests. It was one of the most dramatic cases involving a sitting member of Congress in recent years. Suddenly, headlines labeled him not as a moderate dealmaker or an influential appropriator, but as someone entangled in an international corruption scandal. Cuellar immediately denied all wrongdoing. He insisted that every action he took was legal, reviewed by attorneys, and done with transparency. His supporters echoed his defense, arguing that Cuellar had spent years as a portrayed advocate, particularly focused on border commerce, and that his work naturally involved foreign companies and governments. To them, the indictment seemed politically motivated, or at least overblown. His critics, however, saw the allegations as confirmation of long-standing concerns about his political alliances and financial relationships. For a lawmaker whose district balanced complex issues of trade, border politics, and international partnerships, the accusations hit especially hard. The indictment dominated news cycles, raised questions about foreign influence in U.S. politics, and cast a long shadow over his reputation. Whether he was innocent or guilty, one thing became clear. Henry Cuellar was now fighting the biggest battle of his political life, one that threatened to undo decades of service. On December 3, 2025, everything changed when former President Donald Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon for Henry Cuellar and his wife. To many, it felt like the final twist in a story already filled with political tension, legal drama, and national intrigue. Overnight, the looming threat of prison time, trials, and financial ruin vanished. Legally, Cuellar was a free man. But politically and publicly, the conversation was far from over. What made the pardon especially dramatic was who issued it. Cuellar was a Democrat. Trump, a Republican known for his aggressive political style, rarely extended pardons across party lines unless there was symbolic or strategic value. So what did this pardon signal? Some believed it was Trump's way of highlighting what he portrayed as a flawed justice system, a move to position himself as a defender of those he saw as politically targeted. Others suspected deeper political motivations, ranging from signaling to conservative Democrats to influencing border state politics ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. For Cuellar's supporters, the pardon vindicated his claims of innocence. They saw it as the final confirmation that he had been unfairly targeted and that the charges were an overreach. For his critics, it raised new concerns, not about legality, but about ethics. A presidential pardon does not erase the public's questions. It does not erase the story of money, foreign companies, and influence. And it does not restore trust automatically. The pardon cleared his legal slate, but it deepened the narrative complexity around him. Was this justice served, or political maneuvering? Was Cuellar rescued from an unjust prosecution, or spared from accountability? The implications would follow him into the next phase of his life, shaping how history may ultimately judge him. Looking at Henry Cuellar's life, one thing becomes clear. He is not a simple figure to categorize. His journey embodies both inspiration and controversy, triumph and turbulence. On one hand, he is the son of migrant farm workers who rose through relentless education and hard work to become one of the most educated and influential lawmakers in Congress. He brought federal dollars, infrastructure improvements, and economic opportunities to a district that often struggled to get attention from Washington. Many families, businesses, and institutions in South Texas felt the impact of his work directly. Yet, on the other hand, he now carries the weight of one of the most dramatic political scandals of recent years. Even with a pardon, the questions remain. How close should public officials be to foreign companies? Where is the line between advocacy and influence? What does it mean for a lawmaker to receive a pardon from a president of the opposite party, especially one as polarizing as Donald Trump? Cuellar's story leaves behind a legacy marked by complexity. Supporters may remember him as a pragmatic bridge builder who delivered results. Critics may see him as emblematic of the blurred lines in American politics, where money, influence, and power often intersect in ways that challenge public trust. And for many everyday voters, the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. A man who achieved much, stumbled dramatically, and whose full story may still be unfolding. As Cuellar moves forward, his future, whether in politics, public advocacy, or private life, will depend on how he addresses the shadows cast by the scandal and the light cast by his achievements. And for the rest of us, his story becomes a mirror, forcing us to ask what we expect from leaders, how we view power, and whether redemption in politics is ever truly complete.